welcome to another episode of our series talking about handmade, historical handmade, and how it changed up until today. We'll be talking about another handmade technique that you can meet in Poland. Enjoy! Welcome to another episode of our series about handmade, made in Poland, but how it used to be and how it is today. Today I've got a story of pająki. Literally speaking, like translating literally, that's spiders. But don't be afraid. That's not about those insects that many of us are afraid of. Pająki is a type of decoration. And the story of pająki will be introduced by Karolina Nowaczyk and Mrs. Małgorzata Bołka from Szubin in a translated conversation. If you want to go to the original, then just jump into previous episodes of this podcast. And now let's dig into the translation. Obviously, Małgorzata Bołka, who comes from Szubin, was involved in the folk art of pałuki. Her mother used to be involved as well, so to say that's a family tradition, especially in ornamentation, and she kind of got it from her, as she admits. Currently, she's running a handicraft circle in community center, and she has a status of folk artist in the field of ornamentation and folk rituals of Pałuki region. But what exactly pająki are? Literally translating, those are spiders. But I guess it's more of describing what it is that will tell you the story. Those are nothing more than traditional decorations made from rye straw and tissue paper. Those rye straws are used because they are the strongest, of corns. People used to use newspapers for decorations, and then when tissue paper became available, they started using it instead. So pająki were hung under the ceilings in cottages, and they were made especially for Christmas. Once during the Christmas period, contests used to be organized for the best pająki decorations. Now we're in this pająki making for pałuki folk art contest, as Małgorzata admitted, which takes place in the community center in Szubin at the regional museum in Wągrowiec. That's where this interview was held. And as she admits, she's making those pająki out of straw and tissue paper. There are various types of pająki, of those decorations, such as bells, spheres, stars, even pyramids or ovals. So that's quite a good story about pająki. But how about the symbolism? Did they symbolize anything? Why were they made for Christmas, right? Are they somehow connected to Christmas symbolism or this period of the year? As Małgorzata mentioned, they were just used as a decoration. The smaller ones were hung in the Christmas tree. In the old cottages, there were furnaces where furnaces were used for heating. Pająki were hung to hide the black, shuttered places before the cottage was whitewashed. So, are there specific colors to be used on a pająk, so-called pająk? Or is it just the artist's choice? Well, any colors could be used. Today, we have up to 20 shades of a single tissue paper color, so it's completely the artist's choice. We don't dictate anything. And how long does it take to make such a pająk? So, as Mrs. Małgorzata admitted, kids and teenagers make pająki during those classes of around 2 hours a week. They usually start after Christmas and end around March or April. And they have a break before Easter for making Easter decorations because it usually takes 2 or 3 months. She admitted they need less time when she makes pająki at home, but 2 weeks minimum, and it depends on the type of the pająk. For the bell, for example, she makes each ball that consists of 30 flakes that needs to be curled separately, and each chain is twinned with a straw and 3 tissue flakes, and each flake has to be curled separately. So as you can imagine, that takes a lot of time. So 2 weeks per hours a day, something more or less like that. As Mrs. Małgorzata admitted, it's usually the evenings where longer evenings, or sometimes during Saturdays is where she works. First, she has to cut out all the circles and then cut it in right places and start curling. Then the flakes are curled. Like when are they all curled, she starts completing the chains. And so, for example, the bell payong has 20 chains with 10 bigger spheres and 10 smaller ones. And that's what she needs to, create those 2 wheels for, just to fix those chains. So that seems that it's quite complicated, but it's only what it seems. And how about, how to take those payonki somewhere else? Is it easy to transport them? It seems they are quite fragile. Well, as Mrs. Małgorzata admitted, the bell payong is easy to transport because one can fold one circle on top of the other and the chains just stretched. But those pyramid ones or spheres or stars are way more difficult to transport because they cannot be folded like that. Okay, so as Mrs. Małgorzata mentioned, children are learning how to create such payonki, and she just runs classes. But are there any adults interested in this subject who would like to take up and, become folk artists in the future? Well, she admitted that there are 2 ladies in her class who are over 18 years old, and they are in the adult group, so to say. And she assumes that one of them could handle payonki herself. So for us, it's only a way to be happy about people who are interested in the art, and this art will not disappear because we will have somebody to pass it on to the next generation. As Mrs. Małgorzata admitted, she even has 1 male student. He has been attending classes for over 5 years. They had a rule that each year they make a different payong, and the students choose what they would like to make. And she doesn't impose anything. So she prepares the straw and the measures, and they try to cut it themselves. She prepares the circles for the flowers herself to save the material, and the rest is just up to the participants of the workshop. And as it was admitted during the interview, those participants of the workshops, they also are competing in the contest. And this year, as Mrs. Małgorzata mentioned, all those who had payonki won an award. So one was awarded an honorable mention, even one of those people. So they got equivalent rewards because the jury found that payonki are on an equal level. So they were all very pretty. So that says something about the person who leads those workshops, right? So how about those rods and aspergilles? That's something maybe to talk about. So the rods, as Małgorzata mentioned, were made as painting decorations. Paintings were hung diagonally on the walls, and that's why people used to put the rods behind them delicately. Rods were also put in the corners where people had the figurines of saints, of the Virgin Mary, for example, or a cross. So people used to put rods, flower bouquets, or wreaths there. Wreaths were also hung on paintings to decorate them. They weren't like the wreaths girls wore on their heads. The dancing girls had wreaths called ósemki, like literally translating that's like 8 shaped. Because once most of the girls had braids braided in the 8, and on them they put the wreaths, hence the name, right? So like the plots were in this 8 shape and then the wreath on the head. The pałuki aspergilles were made for Easter, and they were regional poems. To make an aspergill, you need a reed, crab cornets, and herbs. St. John's wort, or straw flower, or yarrow, tansy, and you just twine them all together. Each layer is twined with moss, and in the end, you add the cornets. So the aspergilles were used for the blessing of the Easter foods and were hung on the doors. Legend has it that if a bachelor didn't want to propose to a girl for too long and was led through the door with an asparagus, it meant that he was not allowed to come there anymore and that he had no chances. The next type of decoration is the harvest bouquet. It was made after the harvest back when the wheat was in beans. Today, we have to cut the wheat before the combines to get the, ears of wheat. We decorate the ears with tissue cut like the ornaments for pająki. And we cut the circles, curl them into 7 flakes. Then we just cut the stars, finished with a kind of a green flag, glued, so it's kind of called a leaf. And another decoration that Mrs. Małgorzata mentioned, there were also harvest braids. To make those, you needed just cooked straw. Back then, you only had to soak the straw in hot water because the wheat was different. Then it was braided. Boiled, wet straw is soft and you can bend it easily. The braids had different shapes. Once they were dry, they were shaped into different shapes, leaves, spirals, and decorated with tissue paper. They were usually made by young girls for their betrothed, to decorate their hat, right? And now they are made for the best men and put their buttonholes during the harvest festival. So as you see, those decorations, it's just like a new chapter of a whole new story. So the material you use is right. Has there ever been a year that, there was a problem with getting it? That was a question that Karolina asked to Mrs. Małgorzata. And she said that if there wasn't rye, she used triticale. You can also use oats to make the bouquet, and each grain is tucked in foil. And this year round, Job, is there a time during the year when, there's something else to be done? We can actually assume that if there's no rye, there's no corn, there's something else to be done. And Mrs. Małgorzata just mentioned that she needs to prepare the wheat before the harvest. She needs to dry it well and keep it in a dry place so it doesn't get moldy. She usually prepares straw, cuts it, and hangs it upside down for the ears to be straight for the harvest bouquets, which she makes the next year. So there's always something to be done with the, rice, with the corn. And is the pyramid pająks pattern always traditional and the same? Because, Karolina admitted that she can see 3 different ones there at the place where they were holding this interview. And she was just asking to Mrs. Małgorzata, does she make any changes from, time to time, just to make something different each year, for example? And Mrs. Małgorzata admitted that sometimes she changes the size or the color. Sometimes the corners of the pyramid are of different colors, or sometimes each element has a different color. And when asked about some kind of memorable pająk, special one or a custom made, she told the story about this round one for a lady who chose the colors and used it as a chandelier. Very modern way of using it, actually. The bell can also be used as a chandelier. Just put a light bulb inside and there you have it. So for me as an interior designer specializing in handmade interior design, that's something to explore, definitely. And when asked about, pająki in those bell shapes, she said that those come in 2 types. One is made of chains or spheres, and the chains are twined with 3 round pieces of tissue, and the other one is made of chains made of stars, also twined with straw stars. And instead of small spheres, there are pyramid baskets and at the center. And in a way, in the heart of the bell, it's just a straw star. I know it could be hard to imagine when I'm just telling you this story in this audio form, but please do have a look at the website of the project. There you can find some photos, and they are definitely worth taking a glance on. And how about, this Pałki folk art contest that we mentioned at the beginning? For Mrs. Małgorzata, for 58 years, she has been organizing this Pałki folk art contest. As she mentioned, it has been organized, right? Not in a way that she organized it. But the disciplines are many. They're like sculpture, ornamentation, embroidery addressed to folk artists, and this whole contest is addressed to artists, amateurs, children, and even for teenagers. So folk artists are people with official folk artist status given by the Association of Folk Artists in Lublin, General Board, right? And that is where the committee of the Polish ethnographers gather, and they decide whether the artist's works are good enough to grant them the status of a folk artist. If not, the artist has to work on their skills and apply again. And we know that Mrs. Małgorzata, who was interviewed here, has this, folk artist status. And she has it since 2005. There is a rule that you have to take part in the contest at least 5 years in a row, and then you can apply to join the Association of Folk Artists and then receive the folk artist status. For this contest, she got the works from the Pałuki regions because it's mainly about the folk art of Pałuki. And she admitted they have works from Żnin, Kcynia, Wągrowiec, Rogowo, and from Szubin as well. And there were also Łabiszyn and Barcin, but now there isn't anyone there. This year, mainly 2020, they had 333 works sent for the contest by 67 artists, 25 of whom are children and teenagers, and the rest were adults. So that's something warm-hearted, right, about the handmade. And when doing this interview, they both were placed in the room where all the, awarded works were displayed. And about this place, there also has been a publication for this, 45th contest, and Karolina asked for that. And about the publication that contained biographies of all the artists who had participated in the contest by the time of publication, both living and dead, there were photos, notes, tables that showed all the people that ever took part in the contest and the whole history of the contest since 1963. And Mrs. Małgorzata admitted that she hopes to make a new brochure for the 60th contest, and there will be a lot of workshops and events linked to this anniversary. So that's something worth to observe and to consider. So if you want to just, try out how to make a traditional pająk or any other traditional Pałuki region decorations, and maybe try some of this handmade for your own, that's worth to observe. So I invite you to the website of this project to get some more info. And I hope that I invited you to this colorful world of traditional handmade. I hope I see you in the next episode.